Everybody. Welcome back to the third session of the Here Are the Steps We Took beginner meetings. My name is Rosemary, and I will be your leader for tonight because there's nobody else here. So I'm it, and I'm glad that you're all here. I'm just gonna run through some of this stuff. A lot of this stuff is for in person. So we're gonna start with a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So let's begin. I'm glad you're all back. I always say it's amazing to see how many people drop off right as we get to the fourth step, and it's usually in person. But the thing is that we're not doing the fourth step on the Zoom. We're just listening, and it still keeps people from coming back, interestingly enough. So we're going to begin tonight with a brief history of the AA beginner sessions, followed by a summary of what we've experienced together as a group during the past 2 weeks. For anyone who may be here for the first time tonight, how cool is this, you guys? We're here together for the third time in a row. In the 1940s, when Alcoholics Anonymous had a 75% recovery rate, it was due largely in part to the 4 one-hour beginner sessions, and now I've dragged them out to 5. The only tools the early members had to recover were the simple kit of spiritual tools outlined in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. When a sponsor, quote unquote, brought a new prospect, quote unquote, to Alcoholics Anonymous in those early years, they were taken to the 4 one-hour beginner meetings. And at these meetings, the newcomer was shown the program of recovery, was taught how to work all 12 steps of our program, and had a spiritual awakening as the result. From there, they began to work with others, and they started to bring new prospects to the beginners' meetings to help them to recover from alcoholism. As the weeks passed and the now recovered alcoholic continued to sponsor newcomers through the steps at the beginners' meetings, they found that they were now able to present the program of recovery to the group as outlined in our big book. They thus began to lead the beginners' meetings. We hope that you will consider continuing to attend this type of meeting with the goal of someday leading one of these sessions at your home group. It's all right here in the paperwork. I'm happy to send it to you. During the first week of our journey together, we took step 1. We conceded to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics, Al-Anons, gamblers, overeaters, just out of control, whatever it is that we're here for. We can use this for. So last week, I led you through steps 2 and 3 in the beginning of 4th step. And in step 2, we became willing to believe in a power greater than ourselves, which will solve our problem. We discovered all that was required of us to make our beginning was willingness. We learned that willingness is our foundation, and belief is the cornerstone of the wonderfully effective spiritual structure, and that we are building an arch through which we walk to freedom. Prior to making our 3rd step decision, we discovered that we had to quit playing God. Quite simply, when we play God, it doesn't work. Therefore, we decided God was going to be our director, and that he is the principal and we are his agents, and that he is the father and we are his children. After making this decision, we have received many rewards, and some of us have even had powerful spiritual awakenings. These rewards are known as the 3rd step promises. They are found in the first paragraph of page 63 in our textbook. Please turn there now. We affirmed our decision with what has been termed over the years as the 3rd step prayer. And for anyone who'd like to say this prayer with me right now, it can be found in the second paragraph of page 63, where it says, "We were now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always." After making our 3rd step decision, we saw that we needed to launch out on a course of vigorous action, which includes steps 4 through 9. Or else our decision will have little permanent effect. We had to get down to causes and conditions. The big book then states that resentments have the power to kill more alcoholics than anything else. Therefore, we needed to find some way to be free of them, and we needed to get all this down on paper and take a good look at them. When we ended last week, we gave you the information for and suggested that you write the first 3 columns of your resentment inventory. And now, don't forget, this is not like a full-on, step work here. You can do it that way, but this is really just to use a couple of things as an example to show you how the steps work, especially if you've not done them before, just to get you started and hopefully excited. So this leads us into tonight's session, and I'd like to remind everybody that this session will be about, an hour and a half. I think this will be a shorter one. And now tonight's third session, taking us through step 4 in its entirety. Let's see. Welcome to session number 3 of the Here Are the Steps We Took beginners meetings. Together we are taking the 12 steps based on the directions found in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the personal experiences of our AA pioneers. During this session, we will provide all the information for step 4 out of the Big Book. During the next week, each newcomer and those working the steps with us will be expected to continue writing their 4th step inventory. We're not doing this online together, so don't worry, you're not reading your 4th step on a Zoom meeting. We're just doing this hopefully with your sponsor or somebody that you can work with one-on-one, somebody that you can call one of us and ask to do this, just as an example if you're not working with somebody already. So I am grateful for this opportunity to participate in my own recovery by leading these sessions, and this is one way that I can be of service to others and at the same time grow in the fellowship of the Spirit myself. Many older members have told us the best way to understand the Big Book is to try to explain it to someone else, and they were right. We didn't realize how little we knew about our text for recovery until we started leading these meetings and taking others through this book. If you are here for the first time, we have unfortunately gone over too much material up to this point to try to do a review of what was already covered. After this meeting is over, if you're interested in knowing when we will be doing these sessions again, please see one of us after Flossie or me after the meeting. But the truth is that these meetings are being recorded and they're on the YouTube channel, so you can get that information. Before we begin this session, we need to make sure each newcomer and those taking the steps with us have somebody to sponsor them or somebody to work with. And I hope everybody does have somebody that you can work with, or your sponsor, or somebody that you can talk to. Usually when I do it in person, we kind of pair up. So it's kind of nice just to work with people that you're going through this with. Let's see. Okay, as was explained last week, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous contains step-by-step, clear-cut directions on how to recover from alcoholism by finding a power greater than ourselves. This power will eliminate our obsession to drink and lead us to a new freedom and a new happiness and a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. Absolutely true. From experience, I could say that's true. In the last 2 weeks, we completed the first 3 steps and began the 4th step in the AA program of recovery. In step 1, we conceded or admitted to our innermost selves that we are alcoholics, Al-Anons, whatever the reason that we're here, that we had no reservations or lingering ideas that one day we will be unaffected by drinking alcohol. Then, in step 2, through a simple conception, no matter how limited it was, we found we could come to believe in a power greater than ourselves, which will solve our problem. That's a pretty big promise. Then, in step 3, we made a decision to take the actions necessary, which are steps 4 through 9, to move in the direction of turning our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. The Big Book then told us that just deciding to turn our will and our life over has little permanent effect unless we at once face and get rid of what blocks us from actually turning our will and life over on a consistent basis. And the way we begin facing these things that block us from turning our will and our lives over to the care of God is by first taking a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves and then moving on with the rest of the program. As I said before, the emphasis on the words is in the script. It's not me. Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Please turn in your Big Book to page 64. The authors start by comparing a personal inventory to a business inventory. In the first full paragraph of page 64, they write, "Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and a fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. So we are going to continue to conduct the equivalent of a commercial inventory on our lives that we started last week. And we are going to discover what had blocked us off from the sunlight of the Spirit. And in the next paragraph, the authors tell us exactly what we have to do to conduct a fourth step inventory. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup, which caused our failure, being convinced that self, not alcohol, but self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestations. Now, if you remember, this is a reference back to what we discussed in step 3, that self-will, or my life run on my will, is the root of our troubles. We are now going to inventory, or take stock, if you will, of 3 manifestations of self-will: our resentments, our fears, and our sex conduct and harms toward others. The fourth step commentary in the 12 and 12 goes into much greater detail about this, but we humans have 3 basic instincts of life which create self: the social instinct, the security instinct, and the sex instinct. These are needed in order for the human race to survive. All humans have them, and they are God-given, so they are good. But when we use them selfishly or incorrectly, they cause problems for others and ourselves. When the social instinct is used incorrectly, it brings about resentments. When the security instinct is used incorrectly, it brings about fears. And when the sex instinct is used incorrectly, it brings about harms to others. Left to our own resources, we will invariably overdo it in these areas. In our selfish attempt to fulfill these desires, we are in constant conflict with others. That is why, coincidentally, the Big Book's fourth step process focuses directly on resentments, fears, and harms. So it gets down to our misdirected instincts and the root of our problems. The 12 and 12 also mentions that nearly every serious emotional problem can be seen as a case of misdirected instinct. All self-centered people have difficulties in these 3 areas, whether they are alcoholics or not. We have provided inventory sheets for you to do this, and we will read the clear-cut, simple directions that the Big Book authors have documented for us. Let us reassure you the fourth step is not difficult, nor should it be a tedious process. Within 7 pages of text, the Big Book authors give us precise instructions on how to make a good beginning on facing and getting rid of the obstacles in our path to the power greater than ourselves. So, the first manifestation of self, quote unquote, that we started to look at last week is our resentments. Like we said last week, the word resentment comes from the Latin root word sentire, which means to feel. And when you put re in front of any word, it means again. So the word resent means to feel again. And after we experience what we perceive as being wronged by someone, the first response usually is anger or frustration. But then after a little while, after we have reviewed in our mind what happened and have felt the anger or anxiety again and again, we move to the next stage, which is resentment. And in the 3rd paragraph on page 64, the authors write, resentment is the number 1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all sorts of spiritual disease, for we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. Please notice the equation in that last sentence. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. It describes the program and the only 3 relationships we all have: our relationship with God, our relationship with ourselves, and our relationship with others, which includes the physical world around us. In these first 3 steps, we get headed in the right direction with our relationship with God. In steps 4 through 7, we get headed in the right direction with our relationships with our relationship with ourselves. And in steps 8 and 9, we get headed in the right direction with our relationship with others. Then in step 10, we deepen and broaden our relationship with ourselves. In step 11, we deepen and broaden our relationship with God. And in step 12, we deepen and broaden our relationship with others. So the steps are not some random fluke process. They are a specific, focused, and deeply effective set of spiritual tools that bring about a transformation or personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. So please turn to the sheet entitled Resentment Inventory that you got in the packet from last week. And if you didn't get it, you can put your name in the chat and Flossie will send you a packet if you don't already have it. But it's pretty much the resentment inventory out of the big book. And this is what it looks like. So let's see if I can do this. So there's a resentment inventory. So the first column is I'm resentful at, and the second column is the cause, and the third column is all of the things that it affects. And the fourth column says where had I been selfish, dishonest with myself and others, selfish, self-seeking, frightened. And then I saw it, oh yeah, it was say 3B, which is where I do that prayer and I ask God to take the other person out of it. So you can clearly see that the first three columns of this sheet resemble the example found on page 65, with the exception of an added fourth column. Don't worry, the directions for the fourth column are found on page 67, and we'll be getting to that in a few minutes. So let's first look at the simple step-by-step, column-by-column procedure the Big Book authors give us for writing the resentment inventory. 6 lines from the bottom of page 64, the authors tell us, in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. So in the first column, I'm resentful at, it says to put the following. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. We continue writing the names in the first column, top to bottom, don't forget that part, until we are finished. And how do you know when you're finished? Well, when you think you're finished and no more names come to mind, stop. Ask God for guidance. If more names come, write them down. If not, you're finished with the first column unless you can think of something later. And don't forget, this doesn't have to be a whole fourth step. This can just be an example just to show you how it's done if you haven't done it before. Please note that there is a resentment inventory prompt sheet just before the resentment inventory in your handout packet that will give you some other ideas as well. And that's a great prompt sheet too, by the way, that'll keep you busy. Second column, second instruction, 3 lines up from the bottom of page 64. We asked ourselves why we were angry. In our example on page 65 and on our sheets, the second column is entitled The Cause. Why am I resentful, burned up, or sore at whatever is written in each of the boxes in the first column? And remember, we talked about the first column. You might say, like, my mother, and I got a few resentments going on, so I want to skip a couple of lines because I'm going to have a few different causes. If I can't fit them in that box, give myself some room to write down, if I have multiple resentments at one person, place, or thing. So, what did they do to make me angry? List all the resentments you have for each name. Keep in mind you may have more than one resentment toward any one person, place, or thing. In the third column, third instruction, the last 3 lines of page 64 and the first 2 lines of page 65. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. In the first paragraph on page 65, the Big Book authors repeat themselves and add a few more ways self can be affected. On our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations which had been interfered with? Then at the bottom right of the example given on page 65, the Big Book includes the word pride. Pride can be defined as an exaggerated opinion of ourselves. That makes up the 7 ways mentioned that self can be affected in column 3. Also provided for you is a list of definitions for words used in the 4th step, and these definitions should be handy as you are writing this. So it says here to review the first 3 columns. So I think last week I used an example of, this is all made up, you guys, a compilation of a lot of 5th steps that I've heard. But it's, my friend Susie, who she stole my boyfriend, she stole my alcohol, she stole my money. And I told you, what that affected. And I don't have to write a long list in this, what the cause was, because I don't need much prompting when I get to read this to somebody and they ask me, tell me about Susie. I don't need to read it from this list. I can have down here BF for boyfriend. I can have a dollar sign for money, and I could have liquor or booze written down for liquor. And I'm going to remember what I'm talking about. I don't need to write a book here because I'm going to get a chance to talk about this in the fifth step. So I don't need much prompting. And then all of the things that it affected. But I'm going to give you another example tonight. I usually give that last week and I didn't do it, but uh, again, this is made up from different stories. But I have down the veterinarian. I have a resentment toward the veterinarian. And what is the cause of the resentment? He killed my dog. He killed my dog. That's what I have a resentment about. And what did it affect? It affected everything, you know? So my dog was sick. I took my dog to the vet. The vet gave me a prescription for these pills and told me to come back in a couple of weeks and that should do it. And if it didn't, the dog might have to have surgery, but it was going to be okay. Just needed to get some help, you know? And so I took the dog home and I hoped that the dog got better. And to tell you the truth, I didn't really have the money for the prescription, so I didn't get it filled right away. And I couldn't afford surgery, so I didn't have the money for that. So, I mean, I figured it was going to be okay. And meanwhile, P.S., the dog got sick and died. And so me and my alcoholic fog brain, because I'm drinking, this is all made up. Um, I want to go around and blame the vet. And I live in a small town, like say Cape May, New Jersey, where everybody knows everybody. And I go around to the bars and I go around telling people about this vet that killed my dog. And you can't believe it. I took my dog to this vet and I start going around slamming this guy about I got to be careful here too, because this is a small town. I got to be careful. So, but in most cases, I found out that what was hurt or threatened or interfered with was, my self-esteem. Like my dog died. People are going to think I'm a bad pet owner. So I got to make up a story that says, I'm not to blame. The vet is the one to blame. He didn't help me when I took the dog to him. I took the dog to him. The dog was sick. I took the dog to him, but self-esteem, what are people going to think about me? My pocketbook, well, I couldn't really afford the medicine and I could hardly afford the vet visit. I know I was not going to be able to afford the surgery. So yeah, it's really going to interfere with my pocketbook. My security, my dog was part of my security, but my money's also part of my security. My alcohol is part of my security, and I need my money to buy my alcohol. So this is all tied up with each other. My ambitions, I had ambitions for the dog. I had ambitions for the money. I I had plans. I mean, for a lot of things regarding this. And my pride, I don't want anybody to think I'm a bad pet owner. What are they going to think about me? Like, I'm a great pet owner. I don't want them to think that about me. I'm responsible. I'm working really hard. Like it's that swan in the water that's looking like it's gliding around and it's all chill, and underneath its feet are going like crazy swimming. That's like how I feel inside, but I'm trying to be cool on the outside. My personal relations, they're affected. Because just like last week when I was talking about my friend Susie, who did all those terrible things to me, if I see you, I'm going to tell you all about it. And there's going to come a time where you're going to start crossing to the other side of the street because you don't want to see me. You don't want to hear about it again. Oh my God, here she goes again about the vet and the dog. Oh. And it turns out the vet is my cousin, this guy's cousin, and I'm bitching to this guy about the vet, and it turns out it's his cousin, and he doesn't want to hear this. And so people start avoiding me. It definitely affects my personal relationships because my resentments, I'm spewing this all over the place. And sex relationships, well, if Susie didn't steal my boyfriend and I had a boyfriend, it would definitely affect my sex relations because just when he's wanting to get, loving and, intimate, or, we're sitting on the couch and having a nice conversation, maybe a glass of wine or a bottle of wine or whatever. And all I want to do is complain about the vet or Susie or whatever, my resentments, they keep coming back. I'm refeeling them. I want to talk about them. And I feel like a lot of the times, like kids on a elementary school playground, like I want you on my side. I want you to, come to my side. I want you to buy into my story. I want you to come along and believe with me. And yeah, I was wrong. Pour me another drink, really is how this goes. And so this is just another one of these examples of how all of this stuff is affected. And I still maintain 5, if not all 7 of these things are affected by almost every resentment I have. And if I dig down deep enough and I'm willing to think about it, even like I said, personal relationships or sexual relationships, how could that be affected? Because I want to go on ad nauseum. People aren't going to want to hear it. People in my family, they're like, I can't wait to get off the phone. She's bitching about the vet again. So it's really easy to see how that stuff leaks out into my life, you know? So that's only the first 3 columns that we're talking about here. And when the first 3 columns are complete, the big book takes a very important 2-page break from the resentment inventory so we can soften our heart toward these people, institutions, and principles. The authors tell us to pray for ourselves that we may have a better attitude toward them and to pray for them as well. And why? Because we need to rid ourselves of these resentments. Why would we want to be free of resentments? Shouldn't we be justifiably angry with these people? Don't we have a right to be angry? I mean, she stole my boyfriend. She stole my alcohol. She stole my money and he killed my dog. Now listen, especially if I'm an alcoholic, I've been telling this story for a long time. I'm starting to believe it too, by the way. And it's getting worse and worse every time I tell it. So I'm really justifiably angry, I think, in my mind. Big Book does not paint a pretty picture about holding a resentment. It points out in no uncertain terms that resentment could be an alcoholic's worst enemy. Please listen as I read what the Big Book says about resentment. The chapter How It Works says, resentment is the #1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. Resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit resentment, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. This business of resentment is infinitely grave. It is fatal. When harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. These things are poison. Because of it, the world and its people really dominated us. The wrongdoings of others, fancied or real, had power to actually kill. After writing a 4th step, we begin to comprehend the futility and fatality of our resentments. We commence to see its terrible destructiveness. And in chapter 8, to the wives, it says this about resentments. Never forget that resentment is a deadly hazard to an alcoholic. 2 chapters later, it says, the greatest enemies of us alcoholics include resentment. In the Big Book story, Fear of Fear, it says, I can't afford resentments against anyone because they are the buildup of another drunk. And finally, in the story, Freedom from Bondage, it says, I realized I had to get rid of my last resentment, for my reprieve was running out. And if I didn't get rid of it, I was going to get drunk. Most of us usually think resentments are kind of fun and acceptable. We have a problem with most people, so resentment becomes a way of life for us. Now it was saying that even if I felt that a resentment was justified, which I always did, it was the biggest cause for leading an alcoholic back to a drink. And I desperately do not want to move in that direction. And well, that's simple, isn't it? Very simple. The book says very clearly, if we continue to hold on to resentments, we will drink again. We will go back to the behavior, the reason that we're here in the first place. We will start doing that again. That's because resentment is like taking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. How do we get free of ongoing anger and frustration as the book suggests we do? That's right, the book again suggests prayer. Before we go there, the Big Book authors ask us to turn back to our list because it holds, excuse me, the key to our future. They tell us to look at it from an entirely different angle, which will become column 4 in our inventory. So on the bottom of page 66 in paragraph 4, the book states, this was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us, column 1, were perhaps spiritually sick, also called spiritually unconscious or spiritually blocked off, though we did not like their symptoms. column 2. And the way these disturbed us, column 3. They, like ourselves, were sick too. And the next few lines are prayers for getting rid of our resentments. We asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, "This is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done." Now, please turn to page 552. The Big Book gives us another powerful example of how to use prayer to soften our hearts toward the people we resent. In the middle of page 552, and I'm pretty sure this is the fourth edition, I'm not sure about the third. This is what it says on page 552 in the middle. He said, in effect, if you have a resentment you want to be free of, if you will pray for the person or the thing that you resent, you will be free. If you will ask in prayer for everything you want for yourself to be given to them, you will be free. Ask for their health, their prosperity, their happiness, and you will be free, even when you don't really want it for them. And your prayers are only words and you don't mean it. Go ahead and do it anyway. Do it every day for 2 weeks or more, and you will find that you have come to mean it and want it for them. And you will realize that where you used to feel bitterness and resentment and hatred, you now feel compassionate, understanding, and love. So the Big Book tells us that the way to get over a resentment is by seeing that the person we resent was spiritually blocked off just like we are when we harm others, and to pray that we show them tolerance, pity, and patience so that we can get a better attitude toward them. It also suggests that we pray for the person we resent, that they get the good things in life that we want for ourselves. This is not easy stuff, you guys. Not easy stuff. This softens our heart toward them and allows us to look at the situation around the resentment more realistically. Let's turn back to page 67 and look at the fourth column on our resentment inventory sheets. In the second paragraph on page 67, the directions read, referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. What's the exact nature of our wrongs that the fifth step talks about? Let's take a second to study this paragraph. And it's important to see that our mistakes, it's important to see that we see our mistakes in the resentment. So let's see how we got the proverbial ball rolling in the first place. So let's look at the resentment inventory's fourth column. Remember, we need to look at it from an entirely different angle. What did we do? What are our mistakes? Disregarding the other person entirely. And so that's that sick man prayer, asking God to please, bless them because they're spiritually sick, but then again, so am I. And so when I can do that and take the other person out of the equation, and then I can ask God, where am I to blame? And so that last column now, I can go into that, and it's the same thing from top to bottom. Where had I been selfish, dishonest with myself and others, self-seeking and frightened, and where was I to blame? And so in my experience with Susie, where she stole my boyfriend and my alcohol and my money, where was I selfish, dishonest with myself and others, self-seeking and frightened? And of course, I was all of these things, I was self-seeking because I was only thinking about me. I saw her talking to my boyfriend. I assumed that she was stealing him. They were seeming like they were intimate. They were secrets. Every time I caught them, they were whispering to each other. And I just assumed that they were having an affair and that he was, she was stealing him from me. I didn't get mad at him, by the way. I got mad at her. Dishonest with myself and with others, I and also, with the alcohol and the money too, I never really confronted her. I just assumed that that's what happened and blamed her because my alcohol was gone and my money was missing. And I couldn't blame him because he's my boyfriend. I can't put that on him because I need him. Remember, I have ambitions for him. He's there to help me pay the rent and be my security when we're out drinking, things like that. So I can't blame him. So I'm blaming her for all of this stuff. Self-seeking, I was only thinking about me. I wasn't thinking about them. I wasn't thinking about how my drinking was affecting them. They were living with me and I was drinking alcoholically. I didn't think about that. And frightened. I mean, I was frightened because I knew my drinking was out of control and I couldn't stop because I had tried. I was getting into more and more trouble. I was still looking, for somebody else to blame, but I was also starting to see here when I wrote this stuff down, you know, guess what? Susie and my boyfriend were whispering because they were talking about how they were concerned about my drinking. They were worried about me. They weren't having an affair. They were talking about how could they help me. It turns out that Susie didn't steal my alcohol. I drank my alcohol when I was in a blackout. I forgot that I had drank it and it's gone. And then I went out and I bought more and I spent the money that I had and I forgot because I had blacked out. So I couldn't I couldn't take that on. I had to blame somebody because it couldn't possibly be me. I mean, I need somebody to blame. And so where was I frightened? When I started to see this stuff, I mean, how this affects other people. When I go through these columns and I see how it affects other people, I start to see, later on when I'm talking especially about my character defects and stuff, I see how my drinking, my acting out, my controlling behavior, my gambling, my way of living is affecting other people. I don't exist in a bubble. I am affecting other people. And so this is what this resentment inventory starts to show me is that my behaviors affect other people that care about me, people that want what's best for me, people that want what's best for me even when I don't want what's best for me. And so and the same thing with the vet. So I write all this stuff down about the vet. Where was I selfish, self-seeking, frightened, and dishonest? Selfish. I didn't care about him and his reputation. I'm going around bad mouthing him. And I'm just trying to cover up for myself because I didn't want to spend the money on the prescriptions because it was going to take away from my drinking money. And I couldn't think about surgery because I didn't have the money for that. And so when the dog got sicker and sicker and then he eventually died, I couldn't admit, that I had anything to do with that. I'm just going to blame it on the vet. And then poor me, like I said before, pour me another drink. Self-seeking. I'm not thinking about him. I'm not thinking about the fact that I'm going around town telling everybody that the vet killed my dog. I'm sitting at the bar drinking, and it turns out the bartender, is his cousin, and I'm bad mouthing his cousin, I don't think about other people when I'm doing this kind of stuff. I'm just thinking about how am I going to feel better? How is it going to make me look? How is it going to make me feel? And I'm having an effect on other people around me, and I don't even know I'm doing it. And then I'm wondering why people are crossing the other side of the street when they see me coming. They don't want to talk to me. And frightened, I'm frightened because my life is spinning out of control. I'm not stupid, you guys. I know that this stuff is going on, but it's really hard to let this information in because I don't have a solution. I've tried to stop doing what I'm doing, but it's just like snowballing. It's not getting any better because I'm trying to fix a sick mind with a sick mind. I'm trying to do it myself. I don't have a relationship with something greater than myself. That's why this is so important. I have to have a relationship with something greater than myself, greater than alcohol, greater than my problems. And that's why it's so important in those first three steps to get that relationship with a power greater than myself down. I don't have to understand what it is, but I have to understand that it is and I'm not it. And so then when I ask for help, this is what starts to happen. It doesn't feel like help at first. It feels like hard stuff. But what it is it's bringing to light all of these things that I've been covering up and ignoring and pretending is not going on, and usually drinking or drugging or whatever it is that I'm doing to forget. And if I'm in Al-Anon, I'm trying to fix somebody else's life and I'm trying to tell somebody else what to do because then I don't have to look at my own life. Meanwhile, my life is spinning out of control. And this is where a lot of it is happening, and it lays it out right here for me, which is such an amazing inventory. So let's see. I'm going to see what's next. By completing a searching, and anyway, I hope everybody understands that. Does that hopefully make sense in that fourth step? All right, by completing a searching, fearless, honest, and thorough resentment inventory, we are examining the four dimensions of our existence: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Column one of this inventory deals with the physical, who or what we're mad at. Column two deals with the mental, what we think they did to us. Column three deals with the emotional, what we felt when they supposedly wronged us. And finally, column four rockets us into the spiritual dimension, revealing the exact nature of our wrongs. Where was I? Selfish, self seeking, dishonest, and frightened. I mean, those are pretty standard. Huh. Dishonest, too, by the way. I had a lot of dishonesty in my fourth step, and it wasn't so much about lying, cheating, stealing, which I did, but it was a lot of the times about a sin of omission. I didn't tell you what was going on with me, and I didn't tell you that what you said hurt my feelings or what you did made me angry. Like I was like, no, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. So this is really starting to show me that those character defects are really having an effect on my life. I'm really, not only am I suffering, the people around me are suffering. And so it talks about here the truth of what really happened. And it usually reveals to me how my faulty thinking caused me to take actions which got the ball rolling in the first place. With nearly all resentment, our view of the first three columns can be transformed into a new and peaceful perspective when the truth of the fourth column is revealed. And it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't appear to be that way, but it's what happens when we start doing the steps. So let's look at the next inventory mentioned in step 4, beginning on page 67, and please turn in your packet to the fear inventory. And in the big book, this inventory starts with the last paragraph on page 67, where it says, notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune as we felt we didn't deserve. And in the fear inventory, this next line is part of column 3. The book continues, but did we not ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. So fear is a thief. It robs us of our relationship with God and others and prevents us from reaching our full potential. Fears can usually be classified into 3 categories: afraid of losing what I have, afraid of not getting what I want, and afraid of being found out. Fear in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. When right sized and not controlling, fear brings about caution and prevents us from being hurt. In other words, if I am by the ledge on a roof of a tall building and I experience some fear, it is a good thing because it's letting me know that I'm in a dangerous position. And the fear around this situation will bring about caution and will prevent me from being hurt. However, if going near a sealed window on the 29th floor of an office building freezes me in panic and fear, this is not right sized and it is controlling. And I need to analyze and seek truth about this fear so I can move toward being free of it. 2 really great acronyms for the word fear is false evidence appearing real and forget everything's all right. Another acronym, perhaps on the humorous side, is frantic efforts to appear recovered. Just like with the resentment inventory, we have provided in your packet a fear inventory prompt sheet to help you with identifying your fears. The book continues with the first paragraph on page 68. We reviewed our fears thoroughly, and that's column 1. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. It says this because we have already identified the fears associated with resentment when we did the 4th column in the resentment inventory. So now we're just looking for other fears not associated with our resentments. So remember to also put the fears found in the resentment inventory onto the fears inventory. So my fear of getting found out. They're going to find out I'm a bad dog owner, I'm a bad pet owner. They're going to find out that I'm a bad friend or a bad girlfriend or that I blacked out. Like I have a great fear of people finding this out about me, or that I'm not going to get what I want, or I'm going to lose something that I have. I'm afraid my boyfriend's going to leave me. So these are fears that can translate from the resentment inventory over to the fear inventory. And so the book continues. We asked ourselves why we had them. Column 2, wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Also, column 3, self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Perhaps there is a better way. Column 4, we think so, for we are now on a different basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role He assigns. And those are references, there are 3 references back to the decision we made in the 3rd step to allow God to be our director, our employer, our principal, and our father. Here's another 3rd step reference. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, then does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do. And now here's a prayer. We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. Wow. Okay. So the fear inventory. Doing all 4 columns of the fear inventory. I listed my fears. I asked myself why I had them, but did not I myself then set the ball rolling? How did self-reliance fail me? And then what perhaps is a better way? So this is would seem like it's an easier one, but it's actually sometimes way more difficult. So the fears, again, top to bottom, you do the first column, you write down all the fears you can come up with. The prompt sheet is really pretty good. And then you go back to the second one. I asked myself why I had them. Then you go to the third one, top to bottom. And so I'm going to take, fear of flying. I have a fear of flying. I don't want to fly. I'm scared of flying. I'm not going to fly. Everybody knows this about me, by the way, because I talk about it all the time. I'm so scared of flying. I don't fly. No, no, no. Me. No, no, no. I'm not flying. And P.S. that way nobody asked me to fly, which is nice too. I asked myself why I had them. So I can tell you when I was a kid, I saw the TV, there was an accident, the plane went down, it was horrible seeing on television, all these people died. I was young, impressionable, and that never left me. And so that was it. I decided right then and there, I am never flying. I had not ever flown, by the way, up to that point, but I had seen it on TV and I just made a decision right there, not flying. That scared me, not going to happen. If I go up in a plane, it's going to go down. I'm not doing it. And then I said, but did not I myself set the ball rolling? How did self-reliance fail me? Well, I didn't set the ball rolling. I'm just scared of flying. It's not my fault. I mean, I just set the ball rolling. And then, my sponsor would say to me, well, how did you set the ball rolling? You saw that news event when you were like 10 years old and you decided then that you weren't going to fly. So meanwhile, conveniently, you don't have to go to family functions. You don't have to go on vacations with people. You don't have to go to funerals. You don't have to go to work events because everybody knows, don't ask her, she's afraid of flying, she doesn't fly. It's just a done deal. You've made it known to everybody. You've used it for a million things that you don't have to do, that you really don't want to do in the first place. And so how did you set the ball rolling? You never asked for help. You're an adult now. You could ask for help. You could have gone to therapy. You could have prayed about it. You could have asked somebody about, how their experience, somebody that you knew flew a lot, their experience of flying. You could ask if you could go see an airplane, go tour an airplane, go talk to a pilot. Like there's things that you could have done and you just didn't do anything. You just stood on that fear. I'm not flying. And as I said, it was very convenient because nobody asked me to do anything. I didn't want to do anything. I couldn't be bothered. I didn't want to go. P.S. Don't forget, I'm drinking. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to go to the wedding. I don't want to fly. I don't want to spend the money. I don't want to spend the time. I don't want to see the people. I don't want them to see me. I don't want to be able to not drink the way I want to drink. I'm selfish, self-seeking, frightened, and dishonest. Don't forget all of those things. I don't really want to do anything about this. But now it's asking me to say, well, what's your part in it? And when I say, I don't know, I don't know what my part in is, I said, I haven't asked for help. I've just been standing on the story about why I can't fly. I've just been harping on this for as long as I can remember. And so then what perhaps is a better way? What do I think God would rather have me do? I think God would have rather have me come to him and ask for help. I could have prayed about it. I could have said to God, I think I would like to be able to go to that wedding. My niece is getting married. I think I'd really like to go to the wedding and see the family and see her. She was always my favorite niece. I hate to say no to her. And I really don't have the time to take the train or to drive. It's too far. So I think I'd really like to go. Could you please help me? Now, if I have a relationship with a higher power, I'm going to believe that maybe it's interested enough to help me. And it might be that the help comes in the form of there's a therapist in town that specializes in helping people that are afraid of heights or afraid of flying or things like that, phobias, whatever. Or there is someone in town, I know a friend of mine, and she used to be scared of the same thing and she overcame it. So maybe you could talk to her. I have a friend in town who worked the 12-step program and worked on a fear inventory and worked through the fears and asked for help and overcame her fears because of working the 12 steps. There's a solution, but not if I'm using it as an excuse of why I don't want to do what I don't want to do when I don't want to do it. That's what I don't want to do. So I don't really want help. But now this is kind of blowing this stuff out of the water for me. So these fears that I have that are debilitating are being brought to light. And so those fears, a lot of the times, like, how did I set the ball rolling? I didn't do anything. I'm a victim. Kids are victims. Now I'm an adult. Now I'm a volunteer. I'm scared of spiders. Like it said with I really am scared of spiders, but like it said in the inventory, in the paper before here about talking about going onto the building, is it a normal fear or is it like an abnormal fear? And is it paralyzing? Um, and when I write this stuff down, I can see how it controls my life. And I can see how the fear of flying has really hindered me from being fully involved in my family, with my friends, in life. I don't really see that because I'm right in the middle of it at this moment. I don't want to go. It's going to be interfering. I'm going to have to take off work. I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose some money. I'm going to lose time at work. I'm going to have to pay for an airplane ticket. I have to buy a gift, even if I'm not drinking, by the way. I could be something else. I could be, Al-Anon, whatever. And I'm too scared. I don't want to go because I'm not comfortable. It's going to make me uncomfortable. I don't know how to fly because I've always said I didn't want to fly. So now I feel stupid now. I'm 50 years old and I'm not 50 years old, by the way, either. I told you all this stuff is made up. And I don't know how to fly. So I feel stupid that I shouldn't know how to fly. So I just keep telling myself this story. And this is the resentment. And by the way, like it said, a regret is a resentment turned inward. And so I have this regret now, like, man, I missed a lot because of this flying thing. I can't change my horse midstream. I got to stay on this horse. I got to keep telling people I'm afraid to fly because if I'm not, if I change my story now, I might be expected to fly. But it turns out if I'm willing to do this work, I might find out that I want to change. I want to fly. I want to have this experience. I want to be able to go see my niece's wedding or whatever it is. I have this secret desire, this like a little spark inside of me. Like, what would it be like if I weren't so scared all the time? What would it be like if I could let go and trust God? What would it be like if I thought for 1 second that this stuff could really work for me on my biggest fears? That gets exciting, and that is what motivates me to keep doing this and what motivates me to keep coming back to these steps and what motivates me to keep digging deeper. And so that fear inventory prompt sheet is really helpful for this stuff. So let's see, now I forgot where I left off. Okay, so the fear inventory sheets. All right, how do we get rid of fear? And I'm sure some of you know already, and that's what I just said, through prayer. Page 68, paragraph 3, sixth line number 6. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. He can remove this fear. How can he do that? I don't know. It's not my business. Remember, I turned my will and my life over to him. I'm his problem now. So here's the prayer. We ask, anytime you see the word ask, it's a prayer. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. The results of doing this are in the next sentence. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. How could that possibly be? Because this is a process. It's not an event. I don't just suddenly be struck fearless. I am outgrowing fear. I'm starting to see how God's working in my life. I'm starting to get evidence that if He can get me sober, if He can help me to stop trying to control other people, if He can help me from overeating or overspending or whatever it is that's ailing me, I can start to see, like, wow, maybe He could take care of this for me too. And I have a part in it. I have to be willing. And they talk about that in the big book. Willingness is the key that opens the door. So that's a pretty big promise at once we commence to outgrow fear. Notice the book doesn't say fear goes away and never comes back again. It states that we outgrow fear. We outgrow fear because through prayer, we're asking God to direct us towards His will, to do His work, to do His bidding. And notice what the last part of the prayer says, what He would have us be, not what he would have us do, but what He would have us be. We must go deeper than just changing our actions because, like we've said before, who we are and what motivates us will drive our thoughts and actions. It's that simple, and the miracle is it works. And that's all the information for the fear inventory. But the other thing is that so say I'm in program, I'm doing the steps, and I get to the fear inventory and the fear of flying, and it's like I don't even want to put it down because I don't want anybody to call me on it. I don't want anybody to ask me about it. But what happens is I'm telling God, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going there. I'm not willing to talk about it. And He's saying, well, that's too bad because you're going through all these steps. You're seeing what happens when you do the steps. You have a really powerful story, and you're helping people. And I would like you to go get on a plane and fly to California and go speak at a convention. No, I'm not doing it. Really? You gonna tell God no? Now He's asking you to be of service to Him, and I'm saying no, I don't want to. And I have a lady that I worked with that was working on this step, and she was scared. She was scared of driving over bridges, and she was scared of, being on big roads with a couple of people with big tractor trailers and things like that. And she worked this step, and she did the fear inventory, and it was about driving over bridges and in traffic, and she was just scared. And she has a little child, 7 years old at the time, I think, and she was by herself and she was going, and I said, no. And when I work with somebody in the third step, we do like a God board, which is just a visual representation of what God, means to you, what represents a higher power to you. And I said to her, why don't you take your God board with you when you drive? That God will be your co-pilot. Put him in the seat next to you. So she does, and she goes and she drives to where she's going into the city over the bridge, big tractor trailers. And she calls and I don't get the phone call, but she leaves me a message and she's so excited. I'm so glad I wasn't home to get the message. And she's so excited. And she says, she's like, me and God kicked fear in the butt and we drove over that bridge and we got there and it was so exciting. And I realize now, like, I can do anything. I can go anywhere. I can take my son on a cross country trip if I want to. She didn't realize that her fear was holding her back in so many ways. And since then, she's done that. She's not, I don't think she's done cross country yet, but she's gone up north. She's done things that she didn't think she could do before. And then to top it off, one of her fears was speaking at a meeting, speaking at a little home group meeting. She gets over there. She's in a big city. They have a big meeting she gets to. It's 200 people with a microphone. She basically grabs the microphone and shares into the microphone at this meeting with 200 people. And she's like, who am I? Like, what happened? I don't know. This is what happens when we give God the reins, when we let God direct our path. Things like this happen. So I get on an airplane and not me. I get on an airplane and I go to California and I can speak at a convention. And a whole new world opens up to me, a whole new way of looking at life. And all I had to do was say yes to God and let Him figure out all the rest of it. He'll direct my path. That's what the director part means. And so it's that simple. And the miracle was it works. So that's why this gets more exciting because, right now my big fears are the ones that are obvious. But as I go on, I start to find out that I got all these little fears underneath all these big fears. And so I keep going. I dig deeper and deeper, and it just keeps getting better and better. So now we're going to go to the big book, and the authors continue on the bottom of page 68. And now about sex. I don't like that this inventory is called sex and harms because the first thing everybody thinks about is like, oh, sex, and people have told me like I haven't had sex, or I've only had sex with my partner, one person in my whole life. It's not sex. It's so much more than the physical act of sex. It's about my attitudes towards sex. It's about my beliefs towards sex. It's sexuality, how I use my sexuality, my old ideas about sex, and the harms that I've done to other people regarding that. And it's so much not about just like who I slept with. This is such a great inventory, and I will tell you that to me, it is the inventory that is the catch-all. And the inventories, the fear inventory and the resentment inventory, what that didn't catch, this will, because it's sex and harms. And there's so many great places in here to grab things and put them down in this inventory. So many of us needed an overhauling there, and this is not just a simple tune-up, but an overhauling. But above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off the track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes. Absurd extremes, perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. And then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail, which means express sorrow over, the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we do not have enough of it or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter or judge of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them? So please turn to the sex and harms inventory in your handout packet. And if you didn't get one, Flossie can send it to you tonight, especially when you put your email address in the chat. She'll send you the packets. They'll also be connected to the video as PDFs and you can print them off. And these are already on the last week's video that are on the YouTube channel. So let's see. The Big Book authors go on to tell us to review our own conduct over the past years. Therefore, we will begin our third and final inventory. Your sponsor, or whoever you're working with, will help you with this, as well as with the completion of the resentment and fear inventories during the next week. So the book continues. Here's the sex and harms inventory. It's pretty simple. Whom did I hurt? And then it said, did I justifiably arouse in them jealousy, suspicion, bitterness? And then it says, I reviewed my own conduct over the years past. Where was I at fault? Where had I been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? What were or are my motives? And what should I have done instead? We reviewed our own conduct over the years past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? That's column 3. Whom had we hurt? Column 1. Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Column 2. Where were we at fault? Also column 3. What should we have done instead? Column 4. We got all this down on paper and looked at it. So we need to include on this inventory both a harms review around our sex conduct over the years and also look for ways we harmed others in the past not associated with our sex life. Needless to say, this is also sometimes a long list, and as you start writing this harms list, you may want to read step 8 and the 12 and 12, which gives us other ideas on how we can harm people in ways that we may not have thought of. And so that's actually, you know, what I was talking about is like, I don't even realize how I'm harming people. And I'm slandering, talking about this vet all over town. P.S. I'm, talking to his cousin. Um, it's his business, also. It's not just personal, it's his business. And I'm, bad mouthing the vet. And so, anyway, in the sex and harms, whom did I hurt, directly or indirectly? Perhaps begin with the people you've had sex with and then branch out to all relations, even those not involving sex. And so I'll go back to my boyfriend that I had that I thought Susie was stealing. And did I unjustifiably arouse in them jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? And yes, yes, and yes, because jealousy, I was afraid he was getting tired of my drinking, and I was afraid he was thinking about leaving me. And then, of course, I saw him talking to Susie and I was suspicious and I thought, oh, I got to make sure that I can hold on to him. And so I was started to, try to find a way to make him jealous, to appreciate what he had in me. He should appreciate me. And, doesn't he know that there's other guys that want me too? And he should be paying attention. And so I would come up with these stories that would be something that would make them jealous, suspicious, and bitterness too. And I would tell them, I'd come home and I would say, "Oh, I stopped for gas on the way home, and some guy was talking to me at the pump, and he wanted to know if I was single, and he wanted to know if I could have my phone number." And none of that happened. Nobody's going to talk to me at the gas pump. I stink like booze. I'm high as a kite, probably weaving, probably can't get the stupid gas thing into the gas holder hole. And but I'm telling him this because I want to arouse jealousy and suspicion, like you better be nice to me because you don't know. I could just go out with somebody else, I could just take off and you would lose me. And, bitterness about the way that I treat him. I'm not thinking about him. I'm not thinking about, he's probably thinking, go. I'd be happy to get rid of you at this point because this is you're a pain in the neck, honestly. And I'm just staying around to help you because I'm a good Al-Anon enabler, whatever. But it helps me to, I think jealousy, suspicion, bitterness, it's all controlling behavior, super controlling, super controlling. I want you to pay attention because I don't want to lose you because I'm scared that if you leave, what am I going to do? What about me? And so I reviewed my own conduct over the years. Where was I at fault? Where had I been selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? I didn't, what are my motives? My motives are control. I don't want you to leave. I'm afraid you're going to really get to see who I really am. I'm afraid you might really already know that. And then I'm going to lose the things, fear inventory. I'm going to lose the things I want. I'm not going to get what I want. I'm going to lose the things that I have. And so where was I selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? I didn't care about him. I didn't think about him. I just wanted what I wanted when I wanted it. And whatever it took for me to get it. And that's where the harms come in. I'm not thinking about anybody else. I'm just thinking about how do I get what I want? I need him. I need him to stay. So if I think making him jealous or making him suspicious, like she might be going out with somebody else, I better pony up. I better be nicer to her. I better give her some money. I better take her out dancing or drinking or whatever. That's not usually how it works either, by the way. I usually end up pushing people away. And so my motives are, what about me? So remember to go back and put on the fear inventory any new fears that you find while reviewing your sex. No, my fear of losing him. I'm going to go back to that, even though I might not have picked that up in the resentment inventory. And then what should I have done instead? Well, I mean, at the time, being honest was really out of the question, but of course that's what I should have done is be honest. I'm scared. I'm scared of losing you. I have a drinking problem. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid you're going to leave me. Um, what could I have done? I could have asked for help. I could have prayed. I could have asked for help. I'm afraid that if I ask for help, somebody's going to tell me I have to stop drinking. And I can't stop drinking. I already know that because I've already tried it. So now I'm really scared. There's a lot of fear going on, and there's 100 forms of fear, as it says in the book. So the problem is, I don't see a way out. I don't see how being honest could help, how talking to somebody about it could help, how going to these stupid meetings people keep talking about are going to help. Because don't you understand? I've tried and I couldn't do it. And then they want to say, don't you understand? That's the problem. You tried and you couldn't do it. The first word of the first step is we. We admitted we were powerless and that our lives had become unmanageable. Come in here with us and we'll show you how it's done. When we do it together and when we ask God for help, that's the only way it's going to get done. And this book is designed to introduce me into a relationship with a power greater than myself that can restore me to sanity. And the insanity is that I think I can get over this fear by myself. I think I can get over this, fear of losing my boyfriend by myself, this fear of flying by myself. I've only had it since I was 10. Why would I get over it now? I've already talked myself into this story. And I've already talked myself into the story that my boyfriend is cheating on me. So I'm not going to be honest with him because I think he's going to take off with Susie any minute. And Susie's my best friend. I'm not going to be honest with her because I'm afraid she's leaving with my boyfriend. And besides, she stole my money and she's left to my own devices. The stories I tell myself, I buy into them. And the vet, he killed my dog. That's it. That's the only story I tell. And I tell it enough times, I start to believe it. I forget the part where I didn't spend the money on the prescription because I wanted to drink, because I was scared I wasn't going to have enough money for the alcohol. So the fears, the harms, the resentments, you can see this is so cyclical. It just all keeps feeding back on each other. And then the sex, I mean, it's the same thing. How have I used sex? My beliefs about sex, the stories I heard, the beliefs that I grew up with, whether they're religious, moral, whatever they were, what I think is right or wrong or good or bad. And then I look down my nose at people, or else I feel ashamed. I walk around with guilt. I walk around with secrets. I use my sexuality. I flirt. I need more alcohol, but I don't have enough money. So I flirt with the bartender or the guy at the counter at the liquor store, or worse yet, I'm going to sleep with them to get what I want. I'm going to do things that I didn't want to do. I'm going to do things that I would never have done in my right mind. But don't forget, I admitted in the second step, I'm insane. My thinking is not straight because I want what I want when I want it, and I'll do anything to get it. Lie, cheat, steal. All of these things that we just talked about. So how I use sex, how I view sex, the beliefs that I have about sex. I could get married. I could be living with somebody and, having a physical relationship with them I could be married to them for 25 years, but I still have these old ideas about sex. And they're not serving me and they're not serving him and they're not honest and I can't talk about it because I'm ashamed. Or sex is a bad thing, or I was taught that it was a bad thing, or worse, I got abused when I was a kid. I'm carrying around so much, you guys. And it says it in the ABCs in the big book that no human power could relieve me of my alcoholism. No human power could relieve me of my fears, of my anxieties, of my resentments, of my worries, of the guilt of the harms that I've done people, especially when I start doing this inventory. Oh my gosh, it's just unbelievably weighty. But don't forget, we go back to the third step, which is before the fourth step, which is where the inventories are. And we have to make sure that we have a relationship with a higher power that we understand. Not that we understand what it is, where it is, what it looks like, but we understand that there is one and that it wants what's best for us and that it's going to walk through us every step of the way, right alongside of us through all of these inventories. And we're going to come out on the other side with a solution. And it promises that in the big book, there is a solution. I don't have to do this alone. The weight of these inventories is just overwhelming unless I believe that there's somebody in this with me, including you guys, like when I go to meetings and I hear you guys talking about it and I hear you guys, you've been through it, you've done it, you've done the inventories, you've done the steps. Oh my gosh, I'm incredibly free. After I did the steps, incredibly free. I'm free of the weight. I've talked about it. I've brought it out into the light. I've made amends. I've cleaned up my side of the street. Oh my God, there's a freedom on the other side of this that you can't possibly know until you're willing to walk through it. And this is the walking through part. This is the hard part. But there's nothing when it comes to alcoholism, there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to alcoholism. The story is always the same. It's just the details that are different, which is so wonderful because there's nothing that you're going to tell us that we're going to be shocked at or like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. I mean, most of us, when you go to a meeting, I call it the land of nod. People are sitting in the meeting. Yep, 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 yep. We know that. We know that. Or we'll laugh because we did it. Been there, done that. We're not laughing at you. We're laughing with you. Oh, we did that. That's what alcohol does. It's insane. That's what control. I think I really do believe this. I think Al-Anons are sicker than alcoholics a lot of the time. The alcoholics are trying to control the alcohol. The Al-Anons are trying to control the alcoholic. They're trying to control another person. That's insanity. Go ahead and try it. See how far you get. It's insanity, and it drives Al-Anons crazy. And it's a fatal thing too. And I'm trying to control somebody else's drinking, and they're out drinking, and I'm going looking for them, and I get in my car, which is a lethal weapon, by the way. And I'm driving, looking for him in the bars, and I am so obsessed that I don't see that ball roll out into the street and that little kid that runs out after it. I'm obsessed. I have one thing on my mind. I am going to get him to do what I want him to do so that I'll be okay. Meanwhile, everything around me is in ruins. My family, my friends, my job, my health, everything. So alcoholism is a family disease. Al-Anon is a real fatal disease also. And I think that these steps are, equally effective no matter what it is that you're working on. But to know that you have help after you get through these inventories, wow, is that nice? because I couldn't possibly do this alone. So we're going to continue. The book continues in the middle. I hope you guys got that. What should I have done instead? Well, what should I have done instead? It's the same thing. Pray, which is always the answer. Ask for help. Ask God for help. And I ask God for help, and he sends me to AA, or he sends me to Al-Anon, or he sends me to, I get somebody and I'm like, oh, I know a therapist and she can help you. Or somebody I know went through the same thing. Why don't you ask them what they did? Oh, okay. Because now all of a sudden the willingness is there. The door's open. They were closed to me before because I was like, no, 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 no. And now I'm like, well, maybe. And then that's all God needs is just a little crack of willingness. It's the key that opens the door. And so the book continues in the middle of page 69 by mentioning that we need to develop an ideal for our future sex life, and even gives us a way of testing future relations. In the middle of page 69, in this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? Now, here's a prayer. We ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly nor selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in doing so. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. So the book is going to tell us how to deal with every problem. And here's another prayer. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. And that's another promise. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we are going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. It depends on us and our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. Now, here's a warning. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are the facts of our experience. And to sum up about sex, 1, we earnestly pray for the right ideal. 2, we pray for guidance in each questionable situation. 3, we pray for sanity, which is seeing the truth. 4, we pray for the strength to do the right thing. And if sex is very troublesome, we 5, throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious, which means urgent or pressing or horny, urge, when to yield would mean heartache. So for the last part of 4th step out of the big book is to come up with a future sex ideal, relationship ideal, and praying that we move toward it. And in your packet, right after the sex and harms inventory guide, is a sheet that can be used to develop your ideal. And this form opens with all the references the big book gives for coming up with a future sex ideal, and then has blank space for writing your ideal. And this ideal usually includes 3 aspects of a relationship. 1, ideal attributes and behaviors in ourselves that we would like to bring to a relationship. 2, if you are not currently in a relationship, include ideal attributes and behaviors that we would look for in someone else that we might consider having a relationship with. But if you are currently in a relationship, include positive attributes and behaviors that your partner already has that you can appreciate and notice more. And 3, attributes and behaviors that would describe what an ideal relationship would generally look like. We'll conclude step 4 with the last 2 paragraphs of the chapter, which has a little bit of a review and contains some more promises associated with doing the work up to this point. The last full paragraph on page 70. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. Now, don't forget, this is, can just be a sample. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look on them as sick, or rather spiritually blocked people. And if we've begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward our enemies, and we did this through prayer and forgiveness during the resentment inventory, we certainly are beginning to experience that psychic change that Dr. Silkworth mentioned in the doctor's opinion. So the book continues. We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct, and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him. Step 2, whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him. Step 2, if you have already made a decision in step 3 and an inventory of your grosser handicaps in step 4, you have made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. So the fourth step is not about finding out who we are. It's about finding out who we are not, so we can get rid of it, and who we are, the God within us, will then shine through. And that's another reason why self-knowledge avails us nothing. We need to find out what God wants us to be. Some people think that the fourth step is like cleaning your room by rearranging the same old stuff you've always been stuck with. And this is absolutely not true. The fourth step is more like cleaning your room by throwing out all the things you do not want anymore so that it can be replaced with new things you do want. And in looking at it that way, we should be excited about doing a fourth step. In our fourth step inventories, we will discover, for the most part, that our troubles were of our own making. We will see how we played a part in every resentment and fear that we've ever had, and how our conduct has harmed others. By taking stock of ourselves and sharing our inventories with another person, we will gather a list of things about ourselves that we view as objectionable. These are the very things that have blocked us from God, which is the only power that can remove the alcoholic obsession. The AA program then goes on to ask that we become willing to have God relieve us of our defects of character in steps 6 and 7, and then asks you to make restitution to those whom you've harmed in steps 8 and 9. Also, after you complete your fourth step inventories, you'll have all the information that you're going to share in your fifth step, all of the defects and shortcomings you'll be asking God to help you with in steps 6 and 7, and a list of all the harms you'll be making amends for in steps 8 and 9. So your fourth step will provide everything you need for steps 4 through 9. I keep saying this could be just like a sample. It doesn't have to be a big, long thing. So I hope that you at least try just a couple of examples like I did, just to see what happens when you take it all the way through and how it makes you feel, and hopefully motivates you to want to do a thorough fourth step. So those of you who have never done a fourth or a fifth step and were not intending to, you may hear something tonight that will motivate you to complete steps 4 and 5 in the near future. We want you to know that everything you hear and read tonight is also for your benefit. We are now entering the phase of the program where more and more actions are required, but these actions produce many powerful and positive results. Many of these results are in the form of promises, which, as our lives change, become an integral part of our spiritual being. If our lives didn't get any better, why would we want to stay sober? If all we had to look forward to was more restlessness, irritability, and discontentment, why do the work? AA offers so much more, a new way of living, not just a new way of not drinking, which is far more wonderful than anything we could ever have imagined. And that's why we take the steps. So please pay attention to what I'm about to read. This is a review of what's expected over the next week. Number 1, please continue saying the third step prayer each morning and when needed throughout the day. Page 63 in your big book. 2, if you haven't done so already, please make copies of each of the 3 inventories provided in your packet so that you will have blank forms to write on. What is suggested is to make 10 copies of the resentment inventory, 5 copies of the fear inventory, and 10 copies of the sex and harms inventory, and you'll have them for when you're ready to do a full fourth step. And those PDFs are connected to the videos too. 3, if you haven't done so already, please begin to pray for the people, institutions, or principles that you wrote down in the first column of your resentment inventory, and also pray for yourself to have a better attitude toward them. Then begin writing the fourth column of your resentment inventory. Continue writing the rest of your 3 fourth step inventories, as well as create your future relationship ideal. Please remember to do the inventories 1 column at a time, top to bottom, before going on to the next column. Please make this a priority and try to do some writing every day. This brings us to the end of step 4 and to the end of this session. And I just want to say thank you for being here tonight. And also, if you just, that sounds like a lot, but if you just take a couple of examples in each one of those inventories, by the time we meet again next week, you'll have an idea of how we continue to go through the steps, and you can use your own examples to see how this starts to lift the weight of those inventories and how we find help. So thank you all for being here, and I hope I'll see you again next week. And thanks, Flossie, for doing all of the background work. So that's the end for tonight. See you next week.